last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. In Pima County, Arizona, they'd taken so many kids that there aren't enough homes to place them in, forcing them to sleep at the local CPS offices. Arizona CPS agents are also crying about heavy caseloads after one failed to properly monitor a kid who was returned to her mother, instead copying and pasting reports from previous months, only to let the girl starve to death 10 months later. In Virginia, a state review reveals a system in crisis, struggling with heavy caseloads, low morale, and ineffective leaders after placing a child with a foster mother who later killed him. And in Maine, the Department of Health and Human Services blames a computer glitch that caused the personal information of about 80 people to be sent to the wrong addresses. In Connecticut, the number of adoptions has dropped to its lowest level since 2004. The U.S. Senate hears testimony from parents regarding the use of dangerous and abusive physical restraints on students with behavioral issues. In Missouri, after a 4-year battle, a judge rules that a child snatched from his immigrant mother while she awaited deportation proceedings will stay in the United States with his adoptive parents. And a new study finds that kids who watch too much TV are more likely to be fat around the waistline and have weaker muscle tissue. In Illinois this week, the state decides to delay changes to a program that provides in-home nursing care for severely disabled children after a group of parents threatened to sue. And 600 Illinois CPS agents get their layoff notices after a round of state budget cuts. In Mississippi, a report says that the state has failed to implement court-mandated reforms to their child welfare system brought on by watchdog group Children's Rights, who is now threatening the state with a contempt of court lawsuit. In Oklahoma, the state begins a major overhaul of their child welfare system following a children's rights lawsuit. In Tennessee's child welfare system is reminded that they're still under court-ordered oversight by Children's Rights, who are now complaining about CPS agents leaving a kid with a crack addict. In Texas, a new proposal would require the child protective industry to keep siblings together in foster care and keep them closer to homes. The Texas child protective industry is on the verge of signing contracts with several non-governmental child welfare agencies that would fundamentally change the way foster care services are provided in the state. A new study finds a link between areas hit hard by home foreclosures and a rise in child abuse accusations. And child custody laws for U.S. military personnel are now under scrutiny after the U.S. government has failed to protect the parental rights of deployed soldiers. In India this week, the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights officials says that they're keeping a close watch on orphanages. In Ireland, an internal audit reveals that foster children are being placed with families with criminal records, including one who is charged with having €830,000 worth of drugs and had previous convictions, and who is now a foster parent and has applied to foster another child. And Irish social workers say that they're being treated like human punching bags after pissing a ton of people off, including a teenager who threatened to slit his worker's throat. In Russia, the parliament ratifies a long-awaited agreement with the United States regulating the adoption of Russian children by American parents. In New Zealand, a man gets arrested after taking a small club and smashing out windows at a Child, Youth and Families headquarters. In Mexico, mothers who have been deported from the United States with their babies are finding it difficult to access basic services for them as the kids are not recognized as Mexican citizens. And in South Australia, the Premier Jay Weatherhill says he is sorry on behalf of the government for forcing mothers to give up their babies for adoption back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. In Canada this week, the British Columbia child welfare system is having problems with its new $182 million computer system, which provincial watchdog concluded was deeply flawed and putting children at risk. And a man who killed a 13-month-old foster child back in 2011 gets 10 years in jail after pleading guilty to manslaughter. In England, social workers who are still working for cheap are beginning to turn to charities and welfare offices to make ends meet. Half of British social workers surveyed said that they'd seen their colleagues quit over heavy caseloads. Nearly 90% of British foster parents surveyed said that they've had difficulties when working with British social workers. And a network of hundreds of people are helping families flee England because parents will not get a fair hearing in the UK when British social workers target their kids. In entertainment news this week, MTV's Teen Mom star Janelle Evans gets out of her child support obligation after finally straightening her life out. And in sports, basketball legend Dennis Rodman finally meets his father after 42 years. In Oklahoma this week, a former foster parent is sentenced to 35 years for sexually abusing 3 girls in his care. In Pennsylvania, a foster kid is arrested for sexually abusing his sister and his foster mother. In Tennessee, a foster parent gets 25 years for the rape of 2 of his foster daughters. And in Maine, a 15-year-old foster kid who ran away from the clutches of the child protective industry is recaptured, and her 30-year-old boyfriend is thrown in jail. In California, a cop pleads not guilty to failing to report that a 13-year-old boy was forced to dig his own grave. 2 California Catholic school officials have been charged with failing to report a sexual assault involving a 16-year-old student who was abused by 2 other students. In Florida, a former CPS agent is arrested for falsifying records. And in Georgia, the director of the Child Protective Industry apologizes for failures in regards to the death of a 16-year-old girl who his agency failed to protect. In Utah, a couple is suing the Child Protective Industry, alleging that the agency failed to ensure the safety of their infant daughter who died while in the care of a foster parent. In Washington, a couple is on trial for abusing their 5 adopted kids. In Virginia, 2 parents are charged with abusing their adopted Russian son. And in Ohio, they're still trying to figure out what to do in regards to an incident where a CPS agent got bit by their pet mountain lion. In Arizona this week, 2 brothers meet up for the first time in 15 years after being separated in the state's foster care system. In Texas, the parents of 2 kids who are living with their aunt in a school bus are working towards getting their kids back after getting out of jail. And finally, tonight, in Missouri, a 3rd woman files a lawsuit against a psychiatric treatment facility where she spent 3 months being brainwashed into believing that she had multiple personality disorder and was sexually abused as a child. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.